Alright, YouTube, this may come as a mystery to some people, but the Bushite Republicans and the Clintonian Democrats are identical. They're the same thing. Hillary Clinton is not a leftist. The leftists are the Green Party. Donald Trump's not far right. The libertarian movement is far right. And, of course, libertarian. This comes as a shock to some people. They think they've been trained all their life to believe the Democrats and Republicans are like diametrically opposed on everything so that the illusion of the two-party system can keep going. But it's not true. The two parties that represent dipoles are the Green Movement and the Libertarian Movement. The Democrats and the Republicans are both vaguely right-leaning, authoritarian movements, somewhere in the middle. They have nothing to do with the far right or far left. When you hear some evangelical Republican ranting about gays, not that the Republican Party will ever do a fucking thing about it in the first place, they're just playing it up to voters, number one. Number two, the moralism that they're espousing is on one single issue. You'll often find they're more socially progressive on others. Look at Trump. Trump's accepting of transgendered rights already. He's 20 years ahead of the rest of his party. Oh, I don't care what fucking bathroom Caitlyn Jenner uses. I don't care what bathroom anybody uses. The same time while saying, yeah, I don't feel too positively towards gay marriage, traditional marriage, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, like he actually believes that stuff. He's a New York corporatist. He's not some backwoodsy fucking Kansan. He's just not. He can play the game for the evangelical voters. I see through that bullshit. He is lying to the evangelicals of the heartland. Okay, well, you know, they've been lied to for 2,000 years about their Jesus, so, you know, who gives a fuck, I suppose. But Hillary Clinton is not a leftist, by any measure of the imagination. Look at the things she suggests. For instance, let's look at the economic system. Hillary's saying, oh, we'll raise taxes by like 0.5%. Is that really that big a change? Trump's saying, oh, well, we'll lower it a couple percentage points. Is that that big a change? No, it's not. You still got a high general tax rate, as far as the developed world goes. You still got a lot of what is essentially Clintonian tax and spend. Trump's reform plan, the only saving grace there that makes it far superior is the uncoupling of small business and self-employed and sort of entrepreneurial startup income from corporate income. You uncouple the two and you will have a massive boom in the economy because all these corporations will start getting competed with by startups and self-employed individuals. Costs will drop, wages will rise. The economy will recover under a Trump tax system, by the way. As opposed to a Clintonian system, the economy is not going to collapse. She's not a communist. She's not even a socialist. The economy will continue to limp along and a lot of low-paying jobs will be created. Overall, the economy will neither get considerably weaker nor considerably stronger, barring some major recession or global catastrophe. Yellowstone, Tambora erupts, World War III happens. Barring something like that, or the collapse of a major bubble, which will probably be the student debt bubble, and that'll lead us into our next little segment here. No, our tax plan won't crush the economy, but it's not going to help it. It'll continue to go along much as it is, with a lot of debt. And that's essentially the point. The economy is still struggling. These retarded central bankers keep pumping the economy full of money, inflating the currency, and pretending like we can ignore the debt forever. Well, you can't, unfortunately. Eventually, it's going to cause some significant problems. Look for them to cause them as quickly as possible, by the way, if Trump is elected. It's the first thing he'll probably, unfortunately, have to deal with if he is. Whereas with Clinton, of course, you know, the corporate cash keeps flowing, the monopolies stay monopolistic, and you don't have that problem. You haven't pissed off their hedge fund buddies. Or let's look at guns. What's the Democratic Party always said about guns in the last, you know, half a decade or so? Oh, well, we need universal background checks. Is that really that drastic a change? No. Second Amendment's still being infringed upon. It's just you've added one little more layer of government regulation. What about the Republicans? Oh, no, we don't need background checks to be universal. So in other words, you're not interested in repealing gun control, which would be a significant measure. You're interested in just staying the course. That's not a change at all. So neither of these parties is really interested in changing anything with regards to the Second Amendment. No. If you want the real skinny, look at the Libertarian Party. What's Gary Johnson say? Oh, yeah, I'll eliminate all existing gun control. We don't need it. Now that's a pro-gun platform. Not what Trump's saying. He says, oh, I love guns. Guns great. Yeah, all he's talking about is no additional gun control and maybe rescinding a couple little regulations here and there. That's all he's talking about. Immigration. What about immigration? What are Trump and Clinton saying now? What's Clinton say? Oh, we need more refugees and we'll, conditional amnesty and stuff. It's stuff that's been suggested for, half a century. It's nothing new. It's like when communists rant about what Marx said. Oh, that was back in the 1800s. Find some new fucking material to rant about. What's Trump saying? We're going to build a wall, which again, both parties have supported and talked about for literally decades and never gotten accomplished, and something I happen to support, by the way. Oh, and there will be no mass deportation force. We're going to take a look at these cases. I'm going to soften my tone a little, which means, of course, he's going to kick out the criminals. He's going to kick out those with communicable diseases. And he's going to kick out those who make no attempt to assimilate, which any common sense individual would kick out anyway, no matter how supposedly diverse and fucking multicultural they are, and let the others be conditionally allowed in the country until they pay back whatever total they owe. Which, by the way, is a perfectly fine approach. I don't understand why idiots like Ann Coulter or Glenn Peckerwood or any of these other retards would be against such a plan. Who gives a fuck? They're already here. It's not like they're not already out in the streets somewhere. You're just making them pay back taxes into the system. You spur on the economy that way, you fucking morons. And then the left pretends that it's some draconian measure because you'd kick out a few 100,000 criminals. They're criminals. Let Mexico or Honduras or wherever they came from deal with them. They're criminals. They are literally rapists and murderers or drug dealers or something. I'd let the drug dealers stay, by the way, because the first thing I would do is end the drug war. I'd end the drug war first, then I'd take a look at immigration. I wouldn't give a fuck if they're smoking weed or whatever. Who cares? Lots of citizens do it too. Hillary Clinton's not some pinko leftist. She's a corporate shill who vacations in the Hamptons with billionaire buddies, who is funded lock, stock, and barrel by hedge funds and big banks and Wall Street and a bunch of corporations, Goldman Sachs and Walmart and Microsoft and all the rest. That's who Clinton is. She's not a leftist. She's not a liberal. She's not a progressive. She's not a socialist. The Republicans, really, when they call her like a pinko commie or whatever, they're actually harming themselves. What they should be making clear is, oh, she's not that different from like George W. She's the one praising him. Trump never praised George W. Bush. Let her have enough rope to hang herself with, to hang her campaign with. Let her praise Bush. And then say, oh, well, Bush, isn't that one Republican president we never want to bring up in polite company because he was such a dumbass? That's what you should be doing. Follow Trump's example on that. Let her rant about how great Bush was in comparison to Trump, supposedly. It'll ring hollow. People will realize what she's doing. They'll realize she's pandering, and they'll also realize, oh, that's because she basically is a Bush. The Clintons and the Bushes are probably big members of one giant happy family when they go to get-togethers. You know, Dick Cheney goes out and shoots some turkeys and some people, and then they come back, they cook the turkeys, they cook the people, and they eat them. This is what these retards do all the time. Trump, meanwhile, he's a New York billionaire. He is a corporatist. But he's kind of from the other side of corporatism, and that's the funny part. See, injecting competition back into the system to make the economy grow would help feed his ego. And because he's already old, he doesn't really care, I think, at this point about worrying about his fortune. I think he might actually be good enough to reform the economy that way. But I can't vote for him. I tell you why. Because, again, Trump's populist sort of quasi-nativist message is a change from the Bushite Republicans and the Clintonian center. But it's not that big a change other than parts of his economic reform and the fact that he might actually finally build a border wall. Now, these two proposals endear him to a lot of people who are, vaguely on the right. And again, I use that term loosely, because most so-called right-wing Republicans are not that far to the right. They still believe in all sorts of government interventionism. I think they don't go far enough. I think that sort of semi-laissez-faire system doesn't work too well. It's just a little bit better than like China's mixed economy, or like central planning, like old Russia style or something like that. Well, we need a more free market, not a less free market. But it's too little a change. Whereas the Libertarian Party wants to get rid of all gun control, which will drop the crime rate, to get rid of a good 50% of the tax rate for everybody, which would spur economic growth. I don't care how much you try to blame the private marketplace. Oh, boom and bust, boom and bust. No, it's the result of government intervention in these markets. That's the fucking problem. Because humans are not good at gauging the future, especially on a world stage. That's your problem right there. Also, we need to get rid of central money printing, and the Libertarian Party is the only party proposing that too. Even people like Rand, when they say audit the Fed, don't bother auditing the Fed, just do away with the Fed and make Congress print the money like they're supposed to do. Get them to authorize the currency to be printed. That way we can have accountability. We can control our currency instead of having some corporation doing it for us that calls itself a bank. I'd just get rid of the Fed entirely. Also, they're the only party that doesn't want to just reform domestic surveillance, but do away with it. Oh, reform gun control? No, do away with it. Oh, legalize marijuana? No, legalize all drugs, or at least to criminalize them so that people aren't getting thrown in jail for using them. Simple possession. That's the drastic change I think we need. I want to see this country fundamentally overhauled and return to a much more close to original founding system. I know. Pragmatism prevents that from being fully implemented. I'm not a purist libertarian. But ending the drug war is easy. It can be done with great ease, with great effect. Getting rid of all existing gun control is a fundamentally good idea. Scaling back our war machine to a proper level requires not a decrease in the overall military budget by any significant mark. You'd pay the troops twice what they're getting now, and you'd still save money if you just eliminated the no-bid contracts and all these programs that half the time don't work. Why are we trying to retire the A-10? We should be building twice as many. They're cheaper to build, and they're a hell of a lot more survivable than a lot of the other aircraft that we've got. Plus, they terrify the shit out of people, so why don't we build more of them? They work just fine. This isn't a dog-fighting aircraft. You're firing at things on the ground and ripping straight lines in them because the bullets are coming out so fast. I think it's a great idea. Build, 2 or 3 times as many. Maintain them in pristine order. You got quite a squadron there. Nothing's going to want to face off with a couple dozen of those because it'll die. And so it's a lot cheaper to field than F-35. Okay, spend $1,000 trillion on these new war machines when for similar purposes we'd build 10 or 20 older generation aircraft that'll outperform that one new aircraft anyway 9 times out of 10. So why bother? So I have to support the libertarian movement. Now, Trump is the lesser of two evils when compared with Hillary, because he is at least a mild change from that original centrist core. But again, mild change. I don't want mild change. I want more than that. For other people, I've already said to people, if you're in a swing state, and by early November, the polling is very close in your state, yeah, I would encourage you to vote for Donald Trump. But chances are there will only be a half a dozen or so states that fit into that category. Everywhere else is either going to be significantly red or significantly blue. If the polling aggregate shows that one candidate or the other is leading by 4 or 5 points or more, I would encourage you to vote for the Libertarian Party. Straight ticket, by the way, not just Gary Johnson. There will be people in many of these places that are standing for the Senate or the House to be elected. Vote for them. Because a libertarian president, even if Johnson magically got elected, and the real issue is to get him over 15%. If he gets over 15% in the election, nobody's going to be ignoring the libertarian movement anymore, and that's kind of the more realistic goal. But if he got magically elected, you'd also need people in the Senate and House to aid him. Otherwise, it would just be a freak show, because for 4 years he wouldn't do anything, because there'd be nothing he could do. Issue an executive order, maybe try to defund some alphabet soup agencies. Ultimately, it wouldn't accomplish much. But stop lying to yourselves and proclaiming whether you support Hillary or not, or you support the Democratic Party or not. Maybe you're a critic of the Democratic Party. Don't lie to yourself all day and say that they're leftists, because most of them aren't. Bernie Sanders is a leftist. Elizabeth Warren, kind of. Most of the rest of them, they're not leftists. They're corporate machine politic neoliberals. They are centrist authoritarians. The same with the Republican movement. Again, whether you're a Tea Party member or you're criticizing sort of the so-called far right, the Republican Party is not far right. Most Republicans fit into that same general category as most Democrats do. They're authoritarian centrists who lean very slightly to the right. They lean very authoritarian on a few moral issues, and that's about it. But the Republican and Democratic Party's platforms, ultimately, are essentially right next to one another on a political matrix, with the Libertarian Party significantly closer to libertarianism, obviously, and a little further right, and the Green Party further left, and additionally closer to libertarianism as well. If you want personal liberty, if you think people should be responsible for their own actions and not nanny-stated around by the government, and you're a fiscal leftist, vote for the Green Party. Vote for Jill Stein. And if you think that they shouldn't be nannied around and told what to do by the government, and you don't really want the government to fiddle around with your money because you think you can spend it better as well, you should be voting for Gary Johnson. If you want mild reform of the political system, if you want essentially a moderate that's concerned with like the workers' rights, vote for Trump. If you think the status quo is working just fine, or you're a hedge fund manager or Wall Street banker, you should vote for Hillary Clinton. It's as simple as that. That's the four people in there. And if you're a draconian libertarian who thinks that Gary Johnson is actually a Nazi, you should vote for the Constitution Party, I suppose. I think it's Daryl Castle is their candidate. I'm more comfortable with the pragmatic side. I realize Johnson has his faults. He does mean well, though. There are a few pragmatic steps the Libertarian Party, if it gains dominance, has to take first to gain a larger vote share and begin the process. You can't simply march in and make an ANCAP society or a hardline libertarian society in a few days. It's not going to work that way. There are constitutional restraints, which I would think libertarians understand, obviously, because they rant about it constantly, on the process of government. Therefore, you can't simply march in and say, oh, executive order, I'm getting rid of all bureaucratic agencies, all these laws are gone, sundown ordinance, yeah, term limits for everybody, and so forth. That's not the way that things work. You have to take concrete steps first. There are a few particularly bad things that need to go first. The drug war is number one, domestic surveillance is number two, no-bid contracts everywhere they're in use is number three. That would be enough to occupy a full team of libertarians, president, senators, House, and everybody else for an entire term at least. You get that done, then you move on to bigger and brighter things. Beyond that, of course, guns, foreign interventionism, the way that we give money to other countries, and trying to tackle the debt, which would still be a problem, by the way, even under a libertarian presidency because it's become so large. That's about all. Peace out.